Okay, hello, good afternoon. So, everyone should have a copy of the essay questions. Put your hand up if you do not have a copy of the essay questions. Okay, great. So today we're carrying on looking at John Locke's ideas about identity and memory. And on Wednesday we'll look at a classic article by Bernard Williams called The Self in the Future. We're going to take, it's quite intricate, the discussion of personal identity, and we'll go fairly deep into it in these next couple of sessions. Just a reminder about the essay before we start, that thing about the first paragraph of your essay has to state the thesis for which you wish to argue. The last paragraph should restate your main thesis, summarize the way you've argued for it, and indicate any outstanding problems. Yep. Sorry? Yeah, the reading for Wednesday is Williams is the Self in the Future. That's about personal identity. Oh, it's in the book, Personal Identity. Yeah, it's in the small blue book. Does anybody have it? Hold it up. Yeah, when I say the small blue book, I mean it used to be a small blue book. It's now become, well, as you say. Okay. Does that clarify that? Okay, and that thing about the main thesis, that's perfectly clear what that means and what that's asking for. Okay, we might talk a little bit more about what to do in the essay on Wednesday. Okay, so memory traces and identity. There's a real puzzle about, we've talked about this notion of a memory trace. There's a real puzzle about the way the notion of a memory trace comes in to talking about identity. And I have been discussing this subject, lecturing on it, talking about it with people since I started teaching, and it's only just in preparing for this class that I realized that there's a kind of basic problem here. So I want to just set out what I think this basic problem is. We were looking at where the discussion of personal identity begins with these cases of Locke, the prince and the cobbler swapping bodies, where the prince wakes up, well, the body of the prince wakes up with memories of a drunken brawl in a tavern last night. Meanwhile, in the gutter, the cobbler's body is waking up and expressing lots of detailed memories of the prince's past life. And Locke says everyone sees that the person inhabiting the cobbler's body, that would be the same person with the prince, but it's not the same human, it's not the same biological unit. Or in the story of Yamada-kun and the Seven Witches, people swap bodies in this kind of effortless way. Right? Does anybody know that story? No? Okay. Yes? Okay. And these stories, surely that's possible. Surely swapping bodies would be possible. You don't even need a brain transplant. If you had, during brain surgery, a backup made of your brain, and then during the surgery, your body was accidentally destroyed and the brain taken with it. But if it was restored onto a different brain and a different body, that would still be you, right? That's not that far away from these easy to understand stories. There probably is a movie with that as its premise, right? If the brain was lost and the information were placed onto B's brain, still in B's body. Put up your hand if you think the resulting person would be A in that case. And if you think the resulting person would be B, okay, well I would say that the B voters outnumber the A voters outnumber the B voters there, but okay, let's take this scenario slowly. Suppose you're A. You're going in for the operation. They make a backup of your brain. What's on your brain is too valuable. The nation needs what's on your brain, right? So they make a backup of everything in your brain, store it in a hard disk somewhere. Then your body, unfortunately, does not make it. But, thank God, they have cloned you. And your body has been I don't really have the technical vocabulary here, but your body has been regrown so that there is a new blank brain inside a duplicate of your old body. And now it's easy. They just restore to your brain from the backup on disk. Right? Is that perfectly clear what the story is saying? Okay, so the question is, did you make it? Put your hand up if the answer is yes. And if you did not make it, I'm curious, why did you not make it? Yeah. Yes, it is also still in your brain. Yes. That's right. Oh, I see. Very good. Right. No, that's great. Yeah. Right. Okay. But then there was no point in... Okay, yeah. That's really trenchantly put. Yeah. Oh, B doesn't get any memories, no. Poor old B, yeah. B was either wiped clean, or as in my version, never had any memories to begin with, was just growing from stock. Yeah, then you think you made it. Yeah. Anthony? No? Okay. Yeah. Yes? It could be neither A or B. Yeah. So, C? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you just made a kind of monster, maybe. Yeah. No, I agree, that's a conceivable reaction. But if you ask the question, did you make it? It's hard to say. We'll actually come on to this on Wednesday at more length, but it seems hard to say, well, I don't know if I made it or not. You see what I mean? Either you made it or you didn't. How can there be a third way? Yeah? Anything else on that? Okay, but as you see, it's... although I really take the point there about A dying, still, most of us would think there was a point to the backup. Yeah? When you were restored, that was you making it. The lights came back on. You sailed through. And that bears on what we were talking about with Laurie Paul's scenarios. Remember this from when we were talking about Laurie Paul's book? That suppose you're looking into the future, and if you put the lever up, then the person on the left gets the pain. If you put the lever down, the person on the left gets the serenity. And you're told that's you there on the left. Well, which way do you pull the lever? Okay, the correct answer, the approved answer was down, right? But when we ask, what's the relation between you and the person with the pain here? What these thought experiments seem to suggest, these kind of things seem to suggest, is that what connects you to the person with the pain is that the person with the pain remembers your life. If you do it this way, it's the person with the serenity remembering your life. What you seem particularly exercised about is making sure that the future person who has the memories of your life suffers less pain, does well. Yep. So you're looking forward, but you're looking forward of what that future person will be thinking about the past. Was that too complicated? It's a little bit. But you see what I mean? Yeah? Okay, so we could zap this up and say, just to make that fully explicit, you say that the later person is the same person as the earlier person, if the later person remembers seeing and doing what the earlier person did. That's the connection between memory and the identity of the self. Yep. That memory link between the later person and the earlier person, that's what makes it one and the same person. That's the connect between your present self and your past self. That's the connect between your future self and your present self. That the later self remembers seeing and doing what the earlier person saw and did. Sameness of body is not the key thing. Sameness of memory is not the key thing. Even sameness of soul is not the key thing. It's memory reaching back. Yeah, that's okay. That's the point we've got to. Okay. But then it's a natural thought, well, you better not forget anything. Right? I mean, suppose you now find, geez, when I was 4, what was going on when I was 4? I just can't remember that too well. Then that wouldn't be you. Right? That's what we're saying. It's not you. And actually, amnesia, full amnesia, is not that uncommon. I mean, people in a car crash, that can happen. You get in a car crash, you get a head injury. Amnesia is actually relatively common in that kind of situation. You just don't have any memories of your past life. You wake up, and there are all these apparent to you strangers clustered around your bed, saying, "Don't you remember us?" Woefully. Yeah? They think it's still you. But if you've lost your memories, it can't be you. That's what we just agreed, right? That's what it said. Identity of the self is the same as memory. But then you really can't lose memory and still be the same person. Yep. Losing memory what? Losing memory is a memory. Wait a minute. Don't get too clever with me. I won't be able to follow it. What do you? I mean, you can remember losing your memory. I guess that's true. That's right. But look, if you're waking up in the bed, right, and you don't remember anything before you went to bed, before you got into the hospital, yeah. That's right. So. That's right, you'd be a different person. But there is your family all around you saying he doesn't remember us at all. They think it's you. Are they wrong? Should they just sling you out? Should they just say, that thing there's not our boy? And what do you think? Would that be the right reaction? Antonia's horrified. Very good. Well, if you think about it, we just did that when we were looking at Martin and Deutscher, or that stuff about the bedroom in your the window in your childhood bedroom. Yeah, that somebody prompting you isn't the same thing as you remembering. Yeah. So if they just tell you over and over again, you still haven't remembered anything. You haven't got that aha, now I remember moment. Yeah. Right, but those are memories. Those are. I mean, you're not really remembering in those cases, are you? Right. That's good, but you mustn't go too far down that track because, as you say, it's false memories, right? So someone could implant in me memories of being Napoleon or Mahatma Gandhi or whatever. That doesn't mean that I actually am Napoleon if you just did that thing. Yeah. So these implanted memories aren't memories. They're not memories in the sense that we need for memory to be part of the definition of identity. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So what's the scenario? This is good. I mean, let me just get this. If this is now, well, let's see. If this is now, and this is earlier. Yep. Yep. Well. Yep. Right? Yeah, so right now your memories all come stretch back to here, right? Right. That's great. Okay. And then there's this gap here where you don't remember anything. Yeah. So you're identical to this person, and you're identical to this person. But what about in here? There's nobody during this time period that you're identical to. Whoa. I mean, the story seems perfectly coherent, yeah? But that's really such a strange result. Yeah? But that could happen. That makes perfect sense. Yeah? Or is the story just a contradiction? On the face of it, he'd have to, yeah. Yeah. And that really seems like the wrong answer. Well, actually, no, I'm sorry, I said yes, but he can't argue it's two different people. He's really in trouble with this one because he's got to say this person's identical to this one because the memory really does reach back all the way to 15, and he's got to say that this person's identical to this one because the memory really does reach back all that way. He can't just say there's two different people there. He's got to say there's only one person. But if the police ask you, where were you at this time? Well, I wasn't here. I didn't exist. If you ask the question, how old are you? Well, I mean, you were born back here, but there's a 2-year time where you didn't exist. So you've only been in existence for 2 years less, if you see what I mean. Yeah. Yep. Ah, okay. Yeah. I mean, this is filling in your story a little bit, yeah? So you're supposing, did you suppose this person just didn't have any memories during this period? Okay, so he's suggesting, let's fill it in a bit where you do remember during this period. It's just that right now, you don't have any memories of this period. Yeah. So if this person remembers what happened here, then this person is identical to this person. So this person's identical to this person, and this person's identical to this person, and this person's identical to this person, but this person is not identical to this person. Whoa. Okay. That is really terrible trouble, right? That is bad news. Well, maybe we should stop. Right. Can we talk about something else, please? Well, I think, yep. I'm sorry, can you say that louder? Yeah. Yes. Right, very good. Yeah, so in here life taught you a lesson, right? And you learned to be humble, and that affected what happened. Okay. But the thing is that I agree that the role of memory in shaping your personality is important, and it needs a lot of thought, that. On the face of it, though, just seeing what happens to someone else could have that effect on you. You know, I saw what happened to Billy, who was so arrogant. Eek. Right? I'm going to be humble. That might happen. So the fact that something that's happening is shaping your character doesn't necessarily mean it's you. that stuff is happening to. Right. If I just watch what's happening to someone else, that can shape my character. Yeah. So the mere fact that what was happening to this person in here shaped the character of this person doesn't necessarily mean that they're one and the same person. Right. That was my point. Right. Yeah. Okay. But that's an important point, and we'll actually come back to that in just a second. Yep. Aha, yes. Yeah, right. Someone said, suppose you prompted them. Yeah. Yeah. That is exactly what families do, yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there are two things here. One is, I do think this thing about prompting, I can't remember now who was raised it, but it is important. But it can't be just that only the content of your memories matters, because otherwise you could implant in me all the apparent memories of Napoleon or Barack Obama or whoever, and that would make me identical to them, because the content is all that matters. Then I could have all the content. Yeah, I could be anyone. I could be Tutankhamun. I could be Jimi Hendrix. I could be whoever you like. Wouldn't that be great? Just put the memories in, and I will be them. Yeah, literally. Yeah, but there's something else. I mean, you're right that in the hospital bed with head injuries, usually people get their memories back, and that's the point of this thing, that you prompt them. And eventually the patient does say, aha, now I remember. And it seems to me in this kind of case, what we're usually thinking of is that the person's actually got all this stuff in there somewhere. It's just that they can't get at it. So I think there are different kinds of amnesia. In the usual kind of amnesia, what's happening is that, I mean, the kind of image that physicians give is all the files are still intact. You've really got all the information about your past life filed in there somewhere. It's just that all the filing indexes have dropped off. You can't pull out the files anymore. And eventually, with enough prompting, with your family around the bed, you get, so you can pull it all back. So what that suggests is that what we should say about this kind of case is, even in that 2-year gap, all the files, all the memory traces are still there. All that's going on is that you're just not able to get at them. It would be a different kind of case. I mean, suppose your family are around the bed saying, don't you remember us, and so on. But then it turns out that you didn't have the usual kind of car crash. You didn't have the usual kind of head injury that leads to the usual kinds of amnesia. Suppose it turned out that what happened was that you just went wandering around the physics end of the campus. You were just exploring. You wandered into a room in which there was an incredibly powerful magnet, and your head was just completely erased. That nothing was left. The whole brain just got scrambled. No memory traces. Nothing there at all. If that's what happened to you, and once your family realized that that's what happened to you, frankly, I think your family would be perfectly justified in saying, that thing there's not our Billy. Billy's gone. Yeah. It's a poignant story, but... Yeah.
So does that mean you're not using full-on
Alzheimer's, yes, right. That's right. That is what this implies. And I guess what I wonder, though, I mean, isn't that part of the reason that Alzheimer's is so frightening? It's, that's why people are just terrified of Alzheimer's. It's that sense that this is not just an illness you get. You are being destroyed. You are just not going to be there anymore as you get bad Alzheimer's. Yeah. I think that's what's so spooky and scary about it when you look at it in the face. Yeah. Okay. So, anything else on that? So what that suggests is that the idea of the memory trace is really important for identity here. That if you're going to say memory is the key thing for personal identity, you better tie memory not to just being able to say, oh, I remember this and that, but to having the traces lay down in you, whether you can access them or not. And when we had that example of remembering the window in your childhood bedroom and so on, the idea was that when you're not just being prompted anymore, when you say, aha, now I remember, then what's going on is that the trace in your brain got fired up. Right? So when we're talking about it's the same person later as it was earlier, if the later person remembers seeing and doing what the earlier person saw and did, that means if the later person has memory traces of what the earlier person saw and did. Right? That's all right? Put up your hand if that makes perfect sense. If you disagree with that? If it does not make perfect sense? If you don't know what the question is? Okay, so far as anybody's voting, that's clearly in favour of being perfect sense. Do you want to? You said it does not make perfect sense. Okay. But then, if the memory trace is some kind of brain configuration, right? So if the memory trace is a bit of your brain, when you see the thing happening, the world reaches in and stamps itself in your brain. That's the trace, right? That's the little physical recording getting laid down that you play back later. Yeah? Yeah, well, what I'm suggesting is that you still count as the same person if you get the trace. Even if you don't know that you have the trace, yeah. Okay. I'm not laying this, I'm not just trying to lay down the law here. That's what I'm suggesting. I can understand complaining about that. But now, if we say the later person being the same one as the earlier person requires the later person remembering, in the sense that the later person has memory traces relating to what the earlier person saw and did, and those memory traces are bits of your brain, right? Then people swapping brains should be just impossible. In that whole scenario where two people swap identities because they swap memories but leave all their physical structures intact, that's not going to be possible. That makes no sense. What that means is that this kind of scenario, where the two people just swap bodies, they leave the brains in the same bodies, but the two people swap bodies, in that who's in the body on the right now has all the memories from the person in the body on the left. That's actually not possible after all, because that would require you to be swapping brains in order to swap the memory traces. Yep. Yeah, these two characters could actually, they saw off the top, perhaps the tops of their heads are hinged and their brains are in jack plugs. So they can just, get into a cupboard and take out the brains, swap the brains around, yeah. That would be fine, so far as what I'm saying goes. But that's not the way these stories are usually told. In fact, I'm sure that's not the way this story is told. Yeah, because that I promise you that is not the mechanics of the brain of the body swap in this case. Yeah, and that's what I meant about the case where your thing is restored, the backup is made of your brain, and then it's restored. That all the traces have actually gone. That notion of the backup is more abstract than the notion of the trace. So how could you be swapping brains? How could you be swapping biology? It makes no sense. So once you follow through on what gets you into the memory thing in the first place, it seems that these stories are what motivate thinking that memory is what's central for personal identity. But then you think, no, memory has to do with the memory trace. But the memory trace, emphasizing the memory trace, means that this kind of scenario is just plumb impossible. Unless you do it the way you were the last question I was suggesting. I have them physically swap their brains. Yes? Why do the memory traces have to be brain states? Information that was stored in the backup. Yeah, it's harder to make sense of. I mean, what I mean is, if it just means having an abstract information structure in your head, then you could have that. I don't know. If it's not a concrete thing, this abstract information structure, then if you're just being prompted, then you've got the right kind of abstract information structure. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. So you could think of the memory trace not as a bit of physiology, yeah, but as, well, I don't know, I'm finding it a bit hard to get my head around it. Something a bit more abstract, but if there's in the physiology, but it could be there without the physiology. Okay, that's a hard idea. It might be right. It might be just what you need here. Yeah, it's like the notion of a computer file. It really is like the notion of a computer file, what you want there. Yeah, so it's like when the initial file is laid down in your brain, it's the file that you want, not the physical configuration of a computer. Yeah, the file. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, that. I mean, there is the notion, I mean, you move a file from one disk to another, right? So sometimes you leave the file on the disk and copy it to another disk. And sometimes you don't do that. Sometimes you move the file right over. That's the kind of notion you want. That abstract notion of the file that can be moved around from disk to disk. Yeah. Yeah. So when do you have one in the same file? I mean, sometimes my computer says move file, and sometimes it says copy file. So when am I copying and when am I moving? That's the issue, right? Two files that always go together. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yes. Whoa, okay. Yeah. Yeah. The person is getting very, very abstract at this stage, right? I mean, yeah, that's when it says no more than 9 people in this elevator, you don't really think of it in terms of these abstract data structures. But yeah, that's where we're getting to. Yeah, okay. Anything else on that? Anyway, I think there is a real issue here about whether this stuff about the trace makes sense. The trace seems to be really important when you think about amnesia. And remember Severus Snape. When you think about how Severus got to be his present self from his earlier memories, when you're thinking about sinking yourself into the psychic situation and understanding genetically by empathy, do you really need the memory trace there? When you were thinking about how Severus's earlier experiences made him the bitter, twisted individual he is today, is memory trace a key notion there? I'm genuinely not sure. What are your thoughts? Anyone? Okay. Shall we soldier on? Okay, there is another problem for defining identity in terms of memory. We're going to define sameness of the person in terms of the later person remembering what the earlier person saw and did. And Butler said that consciousness of the identity of the self presupposes and can't constitute identity. The idea here is that it's circular to define identity in terms of memory. And the idea of let me just say what I mean by circularity. I used to, you read the word gorse. And for years I've been reading the word gorse. And I kind of know what it is, but I've never actually bothered finding out what it is. And a couple of years ago I thought, I want to find out what gorse is. So I looked up gorse, and this is what you get. Furs. And I don't know if you can guess my next question. Like, what is furs? So then you look up furs, and this is what you get. Another term for gorse. Anyway, that's circularity, right? You see, I mean, I don't really know how you kind of go around in a circle, if you see what I mean, right? So what you really want there, you got one term defined in terms of another term, and other terms defined in terms of it, and what you need there is some third definition, right? You need some other way of thinking of it. So you need to be shown the stuff, for example, until, look, there you are. There's gorse. There's furs for you, right? So some third way of getting onto the thing, that's what you need. You can't just go round and round like that. Well, suppose you say, what is it? What's the definition of memory? We've got a definition of memory at this point. If you ask what is it for someone to remember a particular past event, they have to have the impression that the past event happened. That's got to be caused in the right kind of way by the past event happening. That's where the trace comes in, the right kind of causal connection. And the last thing is, you had to have been there at the time. I mean, if I remember the Great Fire of London, I had to be there at the Great Fire of London. So that second thing is where the trace comes in. But it's with the third condition, you had to have been there at the time. The circularity comes in. You need for it to be memory that the person was there at the time. But then I'm defining, I'm saying it's the same person later as the person you had earlier. If the later person remembers what the earlier person did, but for the later person to remember what the earlier person did, it had to be the same person. So that's kind of a more elaborate circle, but it's still a circle. We're defining identity in terms of memory, but then memory is defined in terms of identity. So what we need is, we've got this loop round, just as with gorse and furs, we identify identity in terms of, we define identity in terms of memory, and memory in terms of identity. But then just as in the gorse furs case, you need a third fix. You need some other way of explaining what the thing is. So here, you need some other way of explaining what the person is, what the self is. And then it seems like, well, what would you do? You say, I'm going to explain sameness of person in terms of memory, and I explain memory in terms of sameness of person. But how do I explain sameness of person? Well, now I can't do it by talking about memory. I've got to do it by showing you something, like the body or the brain. It's the same person when you get the same human being. But if that's the right answer, then you can't have those cases in which the bodies and brains are all swapped. You can't have this kind of case. It really doesn't make any sense. Or Locke's thing about the prince and the cobbler just doesn't make sense. These cases seem all right. They seem so sensible. I mean, I don't say they happen very often, but they seem so comprehensible. But maybe they're kind of like time travel. You know, you get stories about time travel, and then you think, no, wait a minute, that just doesn't make any sense. It's just a contradiction when you think about it, time travel. Maybe these stories about people swapping bodies are just contradictions. You can't really make anything of them. They don't give you any insight into the nature of the self. They're just kind of fantasies that don't actually cohere. They don't stick together properly. There's one last set of issues here that have to do with this kind of case. You guys quite frequently have invented some of the classic points in the literature, kind of on the fly here. So anyway, this is the famous formulation given by Thomas Reid, which is it's not quite the same as this, but it's a little bit like this, that the retired general remembers what was going on when he was 15. The 15-year-old remembers what was going on when they were 13, but the retired general doesn't remember what was going on when they were 13. Yes? So you get that kind of structure. And then you say, if you're going to say memory is the key thing for identity, what should you say there? What I said earlier was the trace, right? The trace would really help. But actually we can fix this case so the trace isn't going to help. Because suppose that what happens is, let's just do it in terms of traces, that the later person has traces of doing what the 15-year-old did. The 15-year-old has traces of doing what the 13-year-old did. But just as the years have gone on, all the traces here of what the 13-year-old did have been obliterated. All that port, all those fine wines, they just took their toll and did for all the brain cells here. Yeah? So there's no even traces here. So since we've got the traces, this one must be the same as this one, and this one must be the same as this one. But this one can't be the same as that one. That's a contradiction. So is that okay? So what? Can I do that again? Okay. This one's got memory traces of the 15-year-old. The retired one has memory traces of the 15-year-old. Yep. The 15-year-old had memory traces from the 13-year-old. But the retired one doesn't have any memory traces from the 13-year-old. That makes sense, no? Can you do that louder? No, because, I mean, if you think of it, when you were 15, a lot of stuff was happening that you don't remember now. Yeah? But when you were 15, you could remember all that stuff. Yeah? Now you don't remember it so good. Yeah, that's all that's happening here. Only it's happening at the level of the memory traces. The memory traces are just going. Yep. So that means that if the memory theory is right, that means that this person's identical to this person's identical to this person, but this person is not identical to this person. Whoa, 1, 2, 3. The memory trace exists, but he doesn't retrieve it. Yeah, I'm saying suppose that's not true. That's what I mean about all those fine wines. The fine wines go for the memory traces directly. It's just a kind of entropy of your brain. Just, yeah. Either of you.
Do you have a memory of the 15-year-old
I bet, yes, that makes sense, yeah. Yeah, surely that makes sense, yeah. I see. Yeah, it could happen like that. Yeah, I guess the scenario here was just it doesn't. Suppose it's not happening like that. But you're right. Of course, it makes perfect sense. There could be that moment when you're 15, when you're suddenly overwhelmed by the memories of what happened when you were 3, and you remember being overwhelmed years later. Yeah, that could certainly happen. Yep. Right.
How would you be able to make that decision in the first place to say that this general doesn't have any, doesn't remember versus like general?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we do try to make it, when we try to jog people's memories. I mean, the thing about an Alzheimer's patient is that with a head injury patient, it really is worth trying to get them to remember. Yeah. With an Alzheimer's patient, there's not much point in trying to get them to remember. The stuff has gone. Yeah. And that distinction is practically really important.
But what I'm saying is that in general,
Yep.
if he can remember being an officer and having those memories, but he can't remember being 15.
Yeah.
That's not to say that he doesn't have those memories, it's just that he can't remember it.
That's right. That's right.
That, like, aha moment, even if it's young, even if it's just so like how can you definitively say he doesn't have those memories?
Okay.
Or he can't remember it, or there's no connection, he's not the same person. You can't like definitively make that claim because you don't know if he has memories that he can't recall, or if he doesn't have those memories.
I agree. In a real case, that would be a very hard line to draw. I was just telling you the story. It's my story. I mean, you see what I mean? I'm just laying it down. But you're right, in a real case, that would be important and hard to make out. Okay, thanks, guys. Williams on Wednesday, and we'll talk a little bit about the essay then, too.